common butterflies of Northwest Ohio. Rachel, who's a very good friend of me. Um, so she so she will be presenting and talking. Rachel has been a bird counter, and she's also volunteers for BSBO. She's also a volunteer at Nature's Nursery, and she has been the NABA butterfly counter for the last 10 plus years. So thank you, Rachel, for making the time, joining us, and letting us learn a little bit about the common butterflies that we can find in Northwest Ohio. So over to you, Rachel.
Good evening. I'm thankful to Jajinder for asking me to speak on butterflies, and especially in our area where we have a lot of beautiful butterflies. So I've been doing the NABA count, or the North American Butterfly Association count, for quite a few years now. I got into butterflies after birds. I am a birder first. And when the birds were slow in having their babies, I got into butterflies, and then also did the transects and counted them for the local metro parks. And so between those two things, I've gotten to learn them really well. And so I'd like to share the most common butterflies with you guys this evening. And hopefully you will get to see a lot of them out in our area, out by the marshes by Lake Erie.
Yeah, perfect. And then
First
we'll take
off,
the questions at the very end. We'll let Rachel, you finish your presentation first, and then last few minutes we'll use for question and answers.
I thought I would like to tell you what the difference between a moth and a butterfly is. So a lot of times if you see a day flyer, you might think it's a butterfly, because a lot of people think that moths are only nocturnal flyers. They only fly at night, but that's not true. We do have a bunch of day flyers. And so the biggest difference is the antennas. They have much fuzzier and wider antennas on the moths, as well as bigger, fatter, hairier, bigger abdomens on the moths. They also are more fuzzy overall, whereas the butterfly is thinner overall, and they have really thin antennas with just like little bulbs on the end. And they're very smooth and have very slender abdomens. So that's typically how you can tell the difference between a moth and a butterfly when you're seeing one flying during the day, because daytime moths can nectar just like butterflies can. So first off, I wanted to, of course, introduce the monarch butterfly. It's one of the most iconic butterflies, and most people are very familiar with it. It is huge and gorgeous, usually 3 to 4 inches. And so we've got the female on the left and the male on the right. The male has the two scent glands towards the bottom of the vertical lines. And next is the viceroy, which is the monarch mimic. And so I wanted to show you the open version versus the closed version, because you're able to identify whether it's a viceroy or a monarch by the horizontal line that goes through viceroy butterfly. As you can see on the bottom of the butterfly, there's a horizontal line that runs through the vertical lines, and that is present on the open and on the closed butterfly. Also, the viceroy runs a lot smaller than the monarch butterfly. So typically when you see one flying and it's orange and black, if it looks smaller, it's most likely a viceroy. So there's the closed monarch on the left and the semi-closed viceroy on the right, and you can still see the horizontal lines going through the vertical lines, and that is their key identifier. Next is the morning cloak butterfly, and it is a stunning medium-sized butterfly, typically found in the early part of the year, in early spring. It is brown and velvety looking with the blue spots, and it's a yellowish goldish around the edges. And these butterflies can be found low or they can be found high in the trees. And like I said, they're usually found in early spring. The red spotted purple butterfly is one of my favorites. It is an absolutely stunning butterfly. And I've had a chance to actually have one at my house on my wild cherry tree and got to see it eclose or hatch. And so I've had special love for them ever since. On the outside, they're a bluish purple color. And then on the outside, they have red spots. So that's why they're called the red spotted butterfly, red spotted purple for the red spots on the external part. And then when they open up, then there's the purplish blue on the inside. Here's the one that eclosed or hatched at my house. Shortly after it came out of its chrysalis, you can see the bluish coloration on the inside, and there's the red spots on the outside. I really hope you guys get to see this one. They can fly kind of high, but they also can be low, and they love to be in the sun typically. Next is the eastern comma butterfly. And this is one of two butterflies that look similar. So and they're both named after punctuation. So we have the eastern comma, and then next we'll be going over the question mark butterfly. These butterflies both look very similar. They are orange with brown spots, but on the outside of the butterfly, as you can see on the left-hand side, they actually have what looks like a comma on the eastern comma. They do have 3 spots that go across the top of the wing, whereas the question mark has 4 spots. And so this is the question mark butterfly. You can see it looks like a comma with a dot, so kind of like a question mark. And so that's why it's named that. They tend to have silver edging around the edge. And so that can help you to identify the difference. And also they do have that extra horizontal line above the 3 dots on the upper wing. And that can help you to differentiate if the butterflies need closed. Obviously, they're much easier to identify when they're closed. So you can see the punctuation on the outside. You can see this butterfly is drinking minerals off of the rocks. And that's typical of most male butterflies. Females can drink minerals as well, but the males definitely need it to help with reproduction and actually for egg viability for the females, actually. The common buckeye butterfly. For those of you that know me know that this is one of my absolute favorite butterflies. These are migrants that come in the early summer. When they show up, they are a lighter brownish color on the outside. And then on the inside, of course, they have those huge buck eyes for which they're named after. But later on in the season, they have a different form, a late summer, early fall form. It's called the rose red form. And here are some that I've raised. They are typically found on ribgrass plantain, which I have in my backyard, and I've been raising them for about 9 years. They're also on false foxglove, but they are very easy to raise and just super stunning. So they're very low flyers, typically found by the sand areas. And so by the marshes is a really great spot to see them. There's a lot of them out there. Next is the great spangled fritillary butterfly. This is just one of the fritillary butterflies, but it's going to be the most common one that we're going to see in our area. It is a medium large butterfly, and it loves the milkweed type plants. So as you can see on the left-hand side, or even on the right, it is on butterfly weed, which is a kind of milkweed. And so they also love the common milkweed pink blossoms, but these butterflies absolutely flock to these milkweed blossoms in the spring and summer, and you can find a ton of them, especially in the oak openings region where I typically do my butterfly counts. Next is the red admiral butterfly. This butterfly always gets me really excited because it's one of the early spring butterflies. And so generally after the fall and the winter, you're really looking towards spring. And as soon as I see one, I know spring is coming. So they will be one of the first ones out in early spring. They love fruit. So if you want to attract them to your yard, if you have old fruit, whether it's grapes or apples, anything that's extra ripe, like a open sliced banana, these you can see are on some smashed apples at the end of the season. And they also can be seen nectaring by the marshes as well. And they're a small to medium butterfly, and they're extremely erratic in their flight. So it's easier to identify them once they've landed. Next is the painted lady butterfly. I'm so excited to be able to present the painted lady this year because we are having what's called an eruption year. And that means they are in really great numbers. So it doesn't always happen, especially those are birders. They know that, there's certain years snowy owls come in big numbers, or pine siskins. These are migrant butterflies. So when the painted ladies come up here on an eruption year, you can find them very easily. And 2024 is an eruption year. So get looking for these beautiful butterflies. They can be orangish brownish on the inside, but also kind of salmony when they close. This is one of 2 lady butterflies we have in our area, and it's got 4 eyes. 4 eye spots on the outside when it closes. And that's how it's easily identified as a painted lady. Be on the lookout because they have been in great numbers, especially all over the zinnia or the zinnia flowers. Next is the American lady butterfly. This butterfly is not seen quite as often as the painted lady, but it does look similar. It is orange with brown and then can have the salmon coloration on the outside. But as you can see, it has 2 large spots on the outer wing. And so that's how you can identify that it's the American lady is by the 2 big eye spots, whereas the painted lady has the 4 small spots. You can see the one is nectaring, or not nectaring, but drinking the minerals from the dirt. Over at oak openings, you'll see a lot of them in the summer getting the minerals and nutrients they need from the ground. And here's the side by side of the American lady and the painted lady. There is a spot that's different on the front and open side of the butterfly, as you can see on the American lady, and no spot on the painted lady. But the eye spots are going to be the easiest way to identify them, as you can see when they're closed. 2 big ones on the American lady and 4 little ones on the painted lady. Next is the pearl crescent butterfly. Most people have probably seen this little butterfly, but maybe just didn't know what it was. They're very common. They're probably the most widespread butterfly in the United States, and they're a very small butterfly, about 1 inch, and they're orange with brown splotches on them. They love small little flowers and asters, and typically you won't just see one. A lot of times I'll see like 30 or 100, especially over like along the Ottawa Drive. I've seen nearly 100 there. Very feisty little butterflies that love to chase other butterflies, chase other males, and so they're very common and easy to see. This is the little wood satyr, and this is one of the brown butterflies. There are quite a few in this category, but they're not easy to see and find. The little wood satyr tends to be a shaded butterfly. They love to be in the shade. So when I go and do the butterfly count, I look for the areas in the shade, and I look over, and they're usually fluttering around the low plants, or they're sitting in the shade, not in the bright sunny areas. And they've got eye spots on the outside when they close. And a lot of them in this category of these smaller brown butterflies have that. So it can be a little bit tricky to identify. The eastern-tailed blue butterfly. So this is one of 2 small blue butterflies I'm going to introduce. The way you can identify this butterfly is by 2 things. First off, they have tails. That's why they're called the eastern tail blue. But the tails, unfortunately, are extremely fragile and a lot of times break off. So the easiest way to identify them is to look for the orange spots that are on the bottom of the butterfly. So whether the butterfly is open or the butterfly is closed, you can still see the two orange spots on either side. And so that easily identifies it as an eastern tail blue, because as you'll see in the next butterfly that is the same size, the azure butterfly, it does not have any orange spots. So if you see a small purplish bluish butterfly that's flying, and when it stops, hopefully, so you can see for sure, that's how I tend to identify them, is to wait till they stop in nectar. And I look for those orange spots. You won't find any orange spots on the azure butterflies. Now there's spring azures and there's summer azures, but it's just by the time of year. So in the spring, they're called spring azures, and in the summer, summer azures. And there's not much difference in the way they look, just the time of year that they're flying. The American copper butterfly. This is a really small but gorgeous little butterfly. Again, it's barely an inch, and it can be orange and grayish, blackish, or even a dark orange with black in a bunch of spots. And they are a very hard to find butterfly unless you're walking through the meadows. A lot of times you'll pick them up. And they are the more common of the copper butterflies to see, especially if you're in a dry area. But because we're sharing with Ottawa National Wildlife Refuge and out by the marshes, I definitely want to identify the next copper butterfly, and that is the bronze copper butterfly. So this tends to be a wetlands copper butterfly. So Ottawa National Wildlife, McGee Marsh, anywhere towards the water, even Salamander Flats, which is part of Kitty Todd, are going to be areas where you will find these beautiful butterflies. The males tend to have less spots than the females, and these guys are not as dark and contrasty as the American coppers are. But if you're in a wetlands area, there's a good chance that you'll see good numbers of them, especially in the summer. I wanted to go over just a very few of the skipper butterflies. So they used to be their own subspecies, and now the skippers are part of the butterfly family. They're normally very small, and they have hook ends on their antenna. I'm only going to go over 3 different species. We actually have 50 species of skippers in the state of Ohio, typically. So there's tons. They look so similar, and they're very difficult to identify, especially because they fly fast and they're very small. So the most easily identifiable is the silver-spotted skipper. It is going to be the largest skipper in Ohio. It's got the big, large silver spot on its side. And so that's the easily identified part of it. When it is open, though, it only has big orange spots on either side, and it's mostly just brown. Next is the peck skipper. And oh my goodness, look at this cute little face. They have such giant eyes, and of course, their little hook antennas. These guys are very active and very easily found in the summertime. You can see them nectaring on the blazing stars in my picture. They love zinnias. They're very prevalent in the summer to find, and they're absolutely adorable. So this is the male. He's very brightly orange in color. And this is the female Pex. She's much more muted and more of a brownish in color, and she is nectaring on the red clovers. I tend to let those grow in my yard because the butterflies really like them a lot. The common checkered skipper is another one of my favorites. They're just super adorable. And the one on the left that's on the zinnia actually got stuck in my nursery because I have the mallow plant by my nursery, and that's their host plant. So a lot of times they're super active over there, and they'll get caught in my sunroom or my nursery. And so I had to get them out. And so I put it on the zinnia where it could rest for a picture. They have a bluish gray back, and obviously they're more of a black and white and checkered, and so they're easily identifiable. And they're pretty commonly found in the summer in meadows. And again, just like the other skippers, they're very small. So here is a video and a picture of trying to identify and see skipper butterflies. So this was our NABA count, or a North American butterfly count, at Old Openings one year. This was, my friends, absolute anxiety and nightmare. As you can see how many different kinds there were on just one thing of flowers on the common milkweed. You can see a bunch of silver spotted skippers, which are much bigger, but these other skippers and the majority of skippers are barely, even an inch in size. And so it's pretty crazy to try to identify all of them, especially when there's a ton all in the same area. Next is the tiger swallowtail. This one is pretty commonly, at least identifiable by most people, because they're pretty commonly seen, and they're extremely large, about 3 to 4 inches, and they're yellow with black stripes, just like a tiger. And so you can see the difference of the male versus the female. The male has the black lining on the bottom of the butterfly, whereas the female has the blue lining on the bottom. Now, when it comes to the female eastern tiger swallowtail, she has 2 different morphs. The male only comes in the yellow and black stripes, but the female comes in a dark morph. And so if you get her in the right light, you can still see that she's got the yellow and black stripes, but then over top of it, it is black. And then she, of course, she still has her blue at the bottom of her body and her wings, but they're very neat to see. And so it can be tricky though, because there's a bunch of other dark swallowtails that you could confuse them with. So here's one of the other dark swallowtails, and that is the spicebush swallowtail. So we've got the female on the left who is more blue, and she's got 2 orange spots, which I happened to catch, luckily, because if you don't have your shutter speed up super, super high, you are not going to catch these crazy psychos open. They are constantly fluttering, fluttering, fluttering as they're nectaring. They rarely stop. And then you've got the male on the right, and that's more of a blue-green color. And again, like I said, it's more males that tend to drink the minerals from the dirt. And so that one did stop long enough and open for a picture for me. This is the eastern black swallowtail. And it has, if you look, 2 rows of orange surrounding the blue on the outside. And that is an identifying factor on them. And the female on the right picture is on top. She has blue. And the male is the small one on the bottom, and it has yellow. So if it's got the yellow striping, it is a male, and the blue is a female. The one in the middle is one that I raised. These are the caterpillars that you will find in your herb garden. So on your dill, your parsley, or Queen Anne's lace, anything in the carrot family, these guys are very easily found as caterpillars, and you can raise them, which is a lot of fun. And here's some of their caterpillars and their different ages and stages, from the small on the dill seeds to the bigger sizes. So different colors and different ages and stages. Next is the giant swallowtail. This is an enormous and definitely the biggest of all the swallowtails. And it's black with yellow lines. So like kind of the opposite of the tiger swallowtail. And this one got stuck in my garage. And so I took it off the windowsill and took it outside, and it decided to sit with me for a bit. So you can see how extremely large it is on my hand. And on the left in the picture, it was nectarine and a wild iris in the meadow. Next is the cabbage white butterfly. And for most people, even if you don't know your butterflies, you probably know it's a cabbage white. If you see a white butterfly flying in our area, it's going to be a cabbage white. Unfortunately, we don't have any of the other cool white butterflies in our area. So if you see a white butterfly with just a black dot on either side, it's going to be a cabbage white, which obviously are the farmers' least favorite butterflies. They literally eat cabbage. They eat vegetables as caterpillars. So they're not welcomed or wanted by the farmers, but they are obviously in huge abundant numbers. The clouded sulfur butterfly. So this is one of two sulfur butterflies that I'm going to go over. There's definitely others, but they're not as easily found or common. So the clouded sulfur butterfly tends to be a more whitish greenish when it's a female. So you can see one closed and one open on the left side. So they call it an albiform, meaning white form. And then the male tends to be a more uniform light yellow color with just a single spot. And in the third picture, you can see that's a mating pair. So the male is on top and the female's on bottom. She's the light green one and he is the yellow one. So similarly to the clouded sulfur is the orange sulfur. The way that I like to identify the orange sulfur butterfly is as soon as they get up to leave and open their wings to fly, you can see the bright orange at the top of the butterfly's wings. And so they're very common in the summer and extra large in the summer, especially in late. And they have black around the edging. But that upper wing, look for that orange to identify them and their difference between the clouded sulfur and the orange sulfur. The hackberry emperor butterfly. So this is one of two emperor butterflies, but this is the more common one that you'll see in our area. These butterflies love people. I don't know why, but for one, they like to get their minerals, but they typically will land on people's cameras, on people's arms, on their sweaty backs. They love to drink sweat off of people. So a lot of people will, talk about their fun experiences with the hackberry emperors. But generally, you won't find these butterflies unless you are near a hackberry tree. That is where they lay their eggs and their caterpillars eat from, and that's why they're called the hackberry emperor butterfly. Here is the tawny emperor, which is the less common of the two. We don't see those very often around here, but you can see it that we found one during the North American Butterfly Association count. And yeah, it was drinking sweat off me because it's generally 95. And yeah, like my friends say, I'm kind of a sweaty Betty out in the field counting butterflies, but so much fun. I'm just going to do an intro to dusky wing butterflies. They're extremely difficult to identify. I'm going to highly recommend the Ohio DNR's book. It is a butterflies and skippers book. You can get it as a free PDF. They aren't printing them anymore, but it is such a good resource. It literally will tell you what butterflies are out, what month, what county you're in, and which ones you can see at that time. So the wild indigo dusky wing likes the indigo plants, the false indigo, and crown vetch is another one that they like. Obviously, it's nectarine here on Monarch or bee balm. The juvenile's dusky wing is lighter and has more markings. It tends to be a more early spring type of dusky wing. And then the horse's dusky wing is one that you'll mostly find in the summer. And it's got some dots up towards the top of the wings on either side that are one of their identifying markers. But as you can see, they're pretty tricky to identify the difference between the three of them. But if you have a book that tells you what's flying in what months, it really narrows it down and it's very helpful. Well, thank you so much to the Friends of Ottawa for inviting me to speak on butterflies, which I love so much. And I hope so many of you will be able to get out and see these beautiful butterflies. It's late summer, early fall, but there are so many flying around right now. And so it's a great time to get out and to discover these beautiful butterflies.
Thank you, Rachel, for doing this. We can take any questions. Anybody has any questions? Do we see anything in the messages for questions or no?
Not yet. I do have a question though. I was curious, do all butterflies migrate?
No, not all butterflies migrate, and some of the butterflies actually stay in leaf litter. So it's really important that a lot of people just leave their leaf litter and not gather it up into bags. I know a lot of people want to have these super neat, clean backyards or gardens, but honestly, there's a bunch of butterflies, cocoons, even some caterpillars that are out there in the fall and winter that are trying to keep warm underneath that leaf litter. And so it's really important that we actually leave it down for them because they stay here and hide during the winter.
I think we have a question from Betsy. So we don't have any small whites.
No, we do not. The cabbage white is the only white in our county, up in Lucas and Ottawa area, that we have. If you go to different parts of Ohio, you can see some of the other white butterflies, but we only have the cabbage white.
I think, and Jeff has a question if we can post the name of the book in that chat, please. Let me search online and I'll post the link for that ODNR
Yes, I
book.
meant to bring, I do have a copy of it myself. I was able to get it back many years ago from the ODNR, and unfortunately, they are not continuing to print it, but are offering it as a free PDF that can be easily printed off line. And like I said, it shows their host plant. A lot of times it shows their caterpillar. It shows what months they're flying and what counties they can be found in. So it is a really great resource.
Jeff, I just posted the link. It has hyperlinks for each of the books. Like multiple books are there on this site.
It should be called Butterflies and Skippers of Ohio.
Yep, you're right. Yeah, that's what it says. Yeah, let me post that link directly here.
Oh, Betsy says that she's had a harvester butterfly. They are a very cool butterfly and the only butterfly that has caterpillars that eat insects. And so they're like predators. So yeah, they eat bugs and they're very cool. There's certain locations that they can be found, but it has to be near very specific trees to where they can find the aphids that they need for their caterpillars to grow on. I believe they're alder trees, but they're very cool butterflies.
How many butterflies we see typically in Ohio, is that like?
So when I do the North American Butterfly Association count for Lucas County and for Oak Openings region, we typically have 60 species in one day. So that's a really great number of butterflies that you could see in a 1 day span. We typically do it in mid-July, so when the weather's really good, a lot of things are in bloom. But yeah, about 60 species in a day.
That's amazing. Yeah. Wow. I think the swallowtails are my favorite. The colors, the markings on them are just amazing.
Yes, they're so very huge, and their long tails are extremely cool.
Right. I don't see any other questions, but happy to take. We still have a few minutes. All right. If not, Rachel, maybe we can close for today. Oh, there is one question. Yeah. So Lindsay has a question. Is there a good place to see morning cloaks?
I've definitely seen morning cloak butterflies at McGee Marsh. In fact, those pictures of them open were from McGee Marsh during the spring, right on the boardwalk. I have also seen them at Bayview Park in Point Place in early spring, up in the tops of the trees. I've also seen them Kensington Metropark. But I've also seen them at oak openings too. Even on an 80-degree day in February, unfortunately, they get all excited, and some of them hatchery close too early in the spring because of a really warm day. And so obviously they probably won't survive very long because of that. But yeah, they can be found at most parks in the spring. They are a very shy butterfly, unfortunately. So a lot of times it's best to get them up high. Thankfully, the one at McGee was willing to just sit there in the open in the sun and let us get just a couple feet from him.
Betsy has a question also. Rachel, do you ever see, I don't know how to pronounce this, gin and morphs? You see that question, Rachel, from
I
Betsy?
haven't seen that one, no.
Yeah, it says, oh, you haven't seen that butterfly? Half female, so gin and endomorph. Half female,
No,
half male. Yeah.
no, I have not seen one that's half female, half male. I know sometimes there's been some different morphs that have been seen. In fact, there was a tiger swallowtail that was seen at oak openings that was bluish green that my friend found, and everybody was saying that he dipped it in Kool-Aid or something. How could it be bluish green? But they always say individuals, can vary, and so it's hard to say why there's, different morphs like that, but I've never seen one that looked both male and female by characteristics.
Right. I think we have no more questions. Thanks again, Rachel, for doing this, wonderful presentation. And your pictures were amazing also, and you
Thank
included the
you.
videos. So that was good to see. I'm still jealous, you had so many skippers on one plant, that was something to see. Yeah.
Oh, it was our friends' nightmares as we counted and tried to identify them before they moved.
Well, okay. All right.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining.